everyone, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Always ready to go deep.
Today, we're looking at the connection between alcohol use disorder and mental health.
AUD and mental health, yeah.
It's a pretty complex relationship.
It is, yeah.
And we're going to uncover some pretty surprising facts along the way.
Absolutely.
Think of it this way. We're going on a mental road trip through California's alcohol landscape.
Well, I like that.
We're exploring how AUD and mental health intertwine,
Right.
and ultimately what it all means for you.
And hopefully by the end, listeners will not just have a better grasp on the what, but also the why behind this connection.
Exactly. We're going to look at some California-specific stats that might surprise you.
Yeah, they're pretty shocking.
Okay, and then we'll really get into how AUD and mental health can fuel each other.
It's a vicious cycle, yeah.
So buckle up. Let's start with a quick definition of AUD, because it's more than just enjoying a drink now and then.
Yeah, for sure. AUD is a chronic condition where you actually lose control over your alcohol consumption.
So it's not just about willpower.
It's not about willpower.
Okay.
It's about actual changes in the brain.
Okay, so I'm imagining someone trying to hit the brakes, but their car just keeps accelerating.
Right.
That must be so difficult to live with.
Oh, it is. It is. It's like the brain's braking system, which relies on a neurotransmitter called GABA.
Okay.
It's malfunctioning.
Okay.
Now, New Life Recovery Centers are doing some pretty amazing work in helping people with AUD regain control.
Yeah, I've heard great things about them.
What's really unique is that their staff has actually had personal experience with addiction and recovery.
So they've been in that driver's seat themselves.
They have.
That must make such a huge difference in understanding what their clients are going through.
Absolutely. It really builds trust and empathy.
That's so important.
Yeah. Now, zooming out a bit, AUD is a global issue impacting millions. But let's focus on California for a minute.
Okay.
It might surprise you to learn that California leads the nation in alcohol-related deaths.
California? Really? I always think of California as being so health conscious.
That's the common perception.
Right.
But the reality is a little more complicated.
Okay.
On average, over 15,000 deaths in California each year
Wow.
are linked to excessive drinking.
That's huge.
That's more than the entire population of some towns.
Oh, yeah.
And here's another interesting statistic. Over 16% of Californian adults reported binge drinking at least once a month.
Okay.
Now, remember, binge drinking has specific definitions.
Right. Let's clarify that for our listeners.
Sounds good.
What exactly constitutes binge drinking?
So for women, it's 4 or more drinks on one occasion.
Okay.
And for men, it's 5 or more.
Got it.
And one occasion usually means within about 2 hours.
So it's not just about the total amount you drink over a week.
Right.
It's about how much you consume in a short period.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the data gets even more granular. The heaviest 25% of drinkers in California averaged nearly 8 drinks per binge.
Okay.
Almost twice the definition of binge drinking.
Wow.
And they do this almost 4 times a month.
That's a lot.
It is.
Wow, those numbers are really eye-opening. So who's most affected by these alcohol-related deaths? Is it a particular age group or demographic?
Well, men are disproportionately represented, making up nearly 70% of alcohol-related deaths in the state.
Wow.
And age is a factor, too.
Okay.
Over 86% of these deaths are in adults aged 35 and older.
So it's not just a young person's problem.
Right.
This is something that affects people across the lifespan.
It does.
And we're not even talking about the emotional toll or the impact on families yet.
And then there's the financial burden.
Right.
Excessive alcohol use cost California taxpayers an estimated $35 billion back in 2010.
Wow.
Adjusting for inflation, that's almost $48 billion today.
That's a crazy amount of money.
It is.
It really highlights the scale of the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've established that excessive alcohol use is a serious problem in California.
Right.
We know that AUD is a chronic brain disease. But I'm curious about the specific ways this all ties back to mental health.
Okay.
You mentioned that people often use alcohol as a coping mechanism.
Right.
But it seems like it might actually be making things worse in the long run.
Yeah, that's the crucial point.
Okay.
It's not a solution.
Okay.
It's a vicious cycle.
Okay.
While alcohol might seem to relieve stress or anxiety initially, it's actually messing with your brain chemistry in a way that just exacerbates those feelings over time.
Right.
It's kind of like borrowing happiness from tomorrow to feel good today.
Oh, I like that.
But tomorrow always comes with a hefty interest payment.
That's such a good analogy.
Yeah.
So how does alcohol mess with our brain
Oh,
and
yeah.
affect our mental health?
It all boils down to neurotransmitters.
Okay.
The chemical messengers in our brain that control everything from mood to sleep to our ability to focus.
Okay.
And alcohol disrupts that delicate balance.
Okay, so let's get specific.
Sure.
What are some of these neurotransmitters,
Okay.
and how does alcohol affect them?
So two major players in this story are GABA,
Okay.
the brain's natural calming agent,
Okay.
and glutamate, which is more excitatory.
Got it.
Initially, alcohol boosts GABA, giving you that relaxed feeling.
Okay.
But here's the catch. Prolonged drinking makes your brain reliant on alcohol to produce those calming effects.
Okay.
It's like your brain outsources the job of producing GABA, but forgets how to do it on its own.
So wait, the brain gets lazy. I'm picturing a brain in a hammock, sipping a margarita,
Right.
while GABA production grinds to a halt.
It's not quite that simple, but you get the idea.
Ah, okay.
When the alcohol wears off, you're left with less GABA and a surge of glutamate,
Okay.
which can lead to anxiety, irritability, and even insomnia.
Oh, wow.
Imagine suddenly slamming on the gas after coasting downhill.
Oh, yeah.
That's the feeling.
I get it. Okay. So it's not that alcohol directly causes anxiety,
Right.
but it creates this imbalance
Right.
that makes you much more vulnerable.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's something called rebound anxiety, which is particularly unpleasant.
Rebound anxiety. I'm not familiar with that term.
So imagine this.
Ah.
As alcohol leaves your system, especially after heavy drinking, your body overreacts, trying to rebalance itself.
Okay.
You can experience intense anxiety, even panic attacks.
Wow.
Your heart races,
Yeah.
your thoughts spiral.
Yeah.
It's like your body's alarm system goes haywire.
That sounds awful. I can see how someone experiencing that would want to drink more to make it stop.
It's a very natural reaction.
Right.
But unfortunately, it just feeds the cycle.
Right.
It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline.
Yeah. So we've talked about how alcohol disrupts GABA and glutamate.
Uh-huh.
What about other neurotransmitters?
Mm.
What about those feel-good chemicals like serotonin and dopamine?
Yeah,
Don't those play a role in the link between alcohol and depression?
they absolutely do.
Okay.
Serotonin and dopamine are key for regulating our mood.
Okay.
And guess what? Alcohol messes with them too.
So it's not just the calming agents that are disrupted, it's the mood boosters as well.
Right. While alcohol might seem to lift your spirits initially, in the long run, it's a depressant.
Okay.
It depletes those feel-good chemicals,
Right.
leading to sadness, fatigue, even apathy.
So it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
Alcohol disrupts your brain's natural ability to produce calm.
Right.
And it drains your happiness reserves.
Exactly.
No wonder AUD and depression are so often linked.
Exactly. And remember, this relationship goes both ways.
Okay.
Depression can lead to increased alcohol use as a coping mechanism.
Right.
And alcohol use can, in turn, worsen depression.
It's a two-way street.
It is.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
This is all starting to make a lot more sense.
Good.
You mentioned earlier that anxiety disorders are particularly common among people with AUD.
Yeah.
Can we delve into that a bit deeper?
Of course.
Why is that connection so strong?
So it's not just about alcohol disrupting brain chemistry and making you more susceptible to anxiety in general. It can actually trigger or worsen specific anxiety disorders.
Okay.
Let's take social anxiety as an example.
Okay.
So someone who's already nervous in social situations might turn to alcohol to feel more comfortable.
I can see how that would be a slippery slope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine someone relying on alcohol to go to parties or events.
Okay.
Over time, they become increasingly dependent on it to function socially.
Right.
They might even start avoiding social situations altogether unless they have alcohol,
Wow.
which just reinforces their anxiety
Wow.
and makes them more reliant on alcohol.
It's like they need the alcohol to socialize.
Right.
But then the alcohol makes their social anxiety worse,
Exactly.
creating this trap they can't escape.
Exactly. And as their anxiety increases, they might drink more to cope,
Right.
which only makes the problem worse.
It's a cycle.
It is.
And then there's the whole issue of panic attacks.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned that alcohol withdrawal can trigger those?
It's a very real risk. Remember how we talked about rebound anxiety, where the body overreacts as alcohol leaves the system?
Yes.
Well, that intense anxiety can sometimes spiral into a full-blown panic attack,
Yeah.
especially for those prone to them.
That sounds terrifying.
It can be.
I can imagine someone in that situation grabbing a drink just to make the panic go away.
It's an understandable reaction,
You're right.
but unfortunately it feeds the cycle of dependence.
Right. Okay. So we've explored how alcohol can worsen anxiety,
Uh-huh.
but I'm curious to learn more about the specifics of how it fuels depression.
Sure.
You mentioned it acts as a depressant,
Okay.
despite that initial mood boost.
Think about it. Alcohol slows down your brain,
Okay.
impairs your judgment,
Yeah.
and amplifies negative emotions.
Okay.
It's like turning up the volume on all the negative thought patterns associated
Yeah.
with depression.
So it's not just about feeling sad, but also those thought patterns becoming more intense,
Right.
harder to escape.
And over time, alcohol's impact on the brain can trigger major depressive disorder, or MDD, even in people who weren't previously depressed.
So someone who might never have developed depression
Right.
could end up with MDD because of their drinking.
They could.
That's scary to think about.
It is. And the statistics are pretty stark.
Okay.
Heavy drinkers are twice as likely to experience depression compared to non-drinkers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those numbers really drive home how serious this link is
We do.
between alcohol and depression. And I imagine this connection makes it even harder to effectively treat depression.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Studies have shown that people who drink heavily often don't respond as well to depression treatment as those who drink less or abstain.
Oh, wow.
There's a strong link between how much someone drinks and the severity of their depressive symptoms.
So addressing the alcohol use is essential for treating depression effectively.
It's a crucial part of the recovery process.
This has been a lot to take in.
It has.
It's so important to understand these connections.
Yeah.
Can we zoom out a bit and look at the broader impacts of AUD on mental well-being?
Okay.
We focused heavily on anxiety and depression, but I imagine those aren't the only areas affected.
You're right.
Okay.
AUD has far-reaching consequences for our overall mental health.
Right.
For instance, chronic alcohol use can damage the hippocampus,
Ah.
the part of the brain responsible for forming new memories.
So memory problems are a real concern.
Absolutely.
Wow.
People with AUD often have trouble with memory, concentration, and are even at an increased risk of developing early dementia.
I also know from personal experience that alcohol can disrupt sleep.
Right.
But for someone with AUD,
Yeah,
it's probably more than just a few restless nights, right?
you're right.
Okay.
Alcohol messes with your sleep cycles in ways that can lead to chronic insomnia, fatigue, and irritability.
Right.
And, as you can imagine, those sleep problems only exacerbate existing mental health issues.
It's a domino effect.
Yeah.
One problem triggers another,
Right.
and things just keep spiraling.
That's a great way to put it.
And in extreme cases,
Yeah.
the consequences can be even more severe.
Right.
Have you ever heard of alcohol-induced psychosis?
I have, yeah.
I've heard the term, but I don't really know much about it.
Sure.
Is it what it sounds like?
Essentially, heavy alcohol use, particularly during withdrawal or in cases of chronic dependence, can trigger psychotic symptoms.
Oh, wow.
Things like hallucinations, paranoia, and delusions.
That sounds terrifying.
It can be.
It really highlights the profound impact alcohol can have on the brain.
Yeah, it really does.
This is all pretty heavy stuff.
It is.
I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, to be honest.
I hear you.
It's clear that AUD can have a devastating impact on mental health in many different ways.
It can.
But is there any good news here?
Well, there is, yeah.
Is recovery even possible once someone is caught in this vicious cycle?
Absolutely. Recovery is possible.
Okay, good.
And that's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, great.
We'll look at the pathways and the incredible power of hope and resilience.
Okay, that's a relief to hear. I'm looking forward to learning more about how people break free from this cycle and reclaim their lives.
It's a truly inspiring journey.
Okay.
I think you'll find it quite fascinating.
Well, then let's take a quick breather and dive back in with part 2. Stay tuned, listeners.
Sounds good.
All right, deep divers, back for more. We just finished exploring some pretty heavy territory about the connection between alcohol use disorder and mental health. But now, let's shift gears a little. We're going to talk about solutions, about how people can break free from this cycle and reclaim their lives. It's time for some hope and optimism.
It's easy to get lost in the statistics and the science, but the most important takeaway is this: recovery is possible.
Music to my ears. But I imagine it's not as simple as just flipping a switch and deciding to quit drinking, right?
You're right. It's a process, a journey. It takes time, commitment, and the right kind of support. It's like learning to navigate a new city, you know? You might need a map, a guide, and some friendly locals to help you find your way.
So where does someone even begin? What are those first steps towards breaking free?
Well, the most crucial step is recognizing the problem. It's about being honest with yourself. acknowledging that alcohol is negatively impacting your life, realizing that seeking help is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of incredible strength.
That's a really important point. There's so much stigma around addiction, making it incredibly difficult to admit you need help.
It's true. But remember, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Millions struggle with AUD, and resources are available to help you on your recovery journey.
Speaking of resources, we've mentioned New Life Recovery Centers a few times. What kind of support do they offer people struggling with AUD?
Well, New Life takes a holistic approach, providing a comprehensive range of services. They offer detox and medically assisted treatment, or MAP-up, to help manage withdrawal symptoms safely and effectively.
Detox sounds intense, especially for someone who's been drinking heavily for a long time. I imagine it's like hitting a reset button on your brain chemistry.
It can be challenging, but with medical supervision and support, it's a much safer and more comfortable process. And MAT can play a crucial role in early recovery by reducing cravings and helping to stabilize brain chemistry. It's like giving your brain the support it needs to relearn how to function without alcohol.
So that addresses the physical aspect of withdrawal. But what about the psychological and emotional side of AUD? How do they tackle those challenges in treatment?
That's where behavioral therapy comes in. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is especially effective in addressing the underlying emotional triggers of alcohol use.
Okay, so with CBT, you're essentially rewiring those automatic responses to stress and creating new, healthier ways of coping.
Precisely. It's about breaking free from those ingrained patterns and empowering individuals to manage their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Think of it as learning to drive a manual car after years of automatic. It takes practice, but eventually it becomes second nature.
That's a great analogy. And besides individual therapy, I understand New Life also offers group therapy and support groups. I imagine those play a vital role in the recovery process.
Absolutely. Group therapy and support groups offer a sense of community and accountability that's incredibly powerful. It's about connecting with others who understand your struggles and celebrating each other's victories along the way.
It's like having a hiking buddy when you're tackling a challenging trail. You encourage each other, share the load, and celebrate reaching the summit together.
Exactly. And support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous or AA and Smart Recovery provide that safe and supportive environment where individuals can share their experiences, connect with others, and build a network of people committed to sobriety. It's like having a cheering section for your recovery journey.
So it's this combination of professional treatment and peer support that really makes a difference.
It's about addressing all aspects of the individual's well-being: physical, emotional, psychological, and social. It's like weaving a strong safety net to support someone as they walk the tightrope of recovery.
You also mentioned earlier that addressing any co-occurring mental health conditions is vital for long-term recovery success. Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
Of course, as we discussed, AUD often goes hand in hand with other mental health conditions like anxiety and depression. And treating those conditions is just as important as addressing the alcohol use. It's like tending to a garden. You can't expect a plant to thrive if the soil is depleted.
So it's about treating the whole person, not just the addiction.
Precisely. If someone is struggling with anxiety or depression, those issues need to be addressed alongside the AUD, otherwise they're more likely to relapse.
That makes sense. We've talked about professional treatment and support groups, but what about the individual's role in recovery? What are some things people can do on their own to support their healing?
That's a great question. While recovery is a collaborative effort, individuals hold a lot of power in shaping their journey. One of the most empowering things they can do is develop healthy coping strategies to manage stress and triggers without resorting to alcohol.
Okay, so let's get practical. What are some examples of these healthy coping strategies? Give us some tools for that recovery toolkit.
Well, exercise is fantastic for managing stress and releasing those natural mood boosters, endorphins. It's like hitting the refresh button on your mind and body. Mindfulness practices like meditation or deep breathing can calm the nervous system and reduce anxiety. Imagine having a pause button for your thoughts. That's what mindfulness can offer.
I love those suggestions. They're about finding healthy outlets for stress instead of turning to alcohol. What else can people do?
Balanced nutrition is crucial. It provides the body with the fuel it needs to function optimally during recovery. And journaling can be a powerful tool for processing emotions, identifying triggers, and tracking progress. It's like having a personal roadmap of your recovery journey.
These are all fantastic tools for building a foundation of self-care. What about the role of support systems in recovery? I imagine family and friends can be incredibly helpful during this process.
Absolutely. Family and friends can provide encouragement, accountability, and a listening ear. They can be a source of strength and motivation, especially during challenging times.
We've talked a lot about the negative consequences of alcohol use, but I think it's important to highlight the positive aspects of recovery as well. What are some benefits people experience when they break free from AUD? It's like stepping out of a dark room into the sunlight, right?
Exactly. The benefits are profound. Physically, your liver begins to heal, sleep quality improves, energy levels increase, and your risk of developing alcohol-related diseases decreases significantly. It's like giving your body a much-needed vacation.
That's fantastic. It's like your body is finally able to breathe a sigh of relief.
And the mental and emotional benefits are equally powerful. People in recovery often feel happier, more stable, and more in control of their lives. They experience reduced anxiety and depression, improved self-esteem, and a renewed sense of purpose.
It's like they're finally able to live the life they were meant to live, free from the weight of addiction.
Precisely. And those positive changes have a ripple effect, impacting their relationships, their careers, and their overall well-being. Recovery is a truly transformative journey.
This is so inspiring. It reminds us that even when facing addiction, hope and healing are always possible.
And it's essential to remember that recovery is an ongoing process. There will be ups and downs, but with the right support and commitment to self-care, individuals can achieve lasting sobriety and live full, meaningful lives.
It's like any worthwhile endeavor in life. It takes effort, dedication, and a willingness to keep learning and growing.
Absolutely. And it's worth every step of the journey.
We've talked about professional treatment, support groups, and developing healthy coping strategies, but is there a particular type of therapy considered the gold standard for treating AUD? What's the most effective approach?
While there's no one-size-fits-all solution, certain therapies consistently show promising results. One such therapy is motivational interviewing, or MI.
Motivational interviewing, that's a new one for me. Tell me more.
MI is a collaborative, person-centered approach that helps individuals explore and resolve their ambivalence about change. It's less about telling someone what to do and more about guiding them to uncover their own reasons for wanting to change and empowering them to make those changes.
So it's about helping someone discover their own internal motivation, their own why for wanting to recover.
Exactly. It's about meeting them where they are and helping them tap into their own inner strength and desire for change.
You can see how that would be really effective, especially in those early stages of recovery when someone might still be on the fence about giving up alcohol.
MI has been shown to be particularly helpful in overcoming that initial hurdle and setting people on the path to lasting change.
It's like giving someone a gentle nudge in the right direction rather than forcing them to go a certain way.
Precisely. And MI is often used alongside other therapies, like CBT, for a more comprehensive approach to treatment.
So there's no magic bullet, but there are proven methods to help people break free from addiction and reclaim their lives.
That's the key takeaway. Recovery is possible, and there is hope.
Well said. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I have one more question. We've talked extensively about the impact of AUD on the individual, but what about the ripple effects? How does AUD affect families and loved ones? It's not just the individual struggling, right? Or
You're absolutely right. AUD impacts everyone around the individual struggling with addiction. Families and loved ones often experience a range of emotions: worry, fear, anger, resentment. It can feel like an emotional roller coaster.
I imagine it's heartbreaking to watch someone you love struggle with addiction.
It is. And those feelings are valid. It's okay to feel frustrated, confused, even angry. But it's also vital to find healthy ways to cope with those emotions and set boundaries to protect your own well-being.
So it's about finding that balance between supporting the person in recovery and taking care of yourself. It's like putting on your own oxygen mask before helping someone else.
Exactly. And there are resources specifically designed to support families and loved ones on this journey. Support groups like Al-Anon and Alateen are fantastic resources.
I've heard of those groups. They offer a space for people to share their experiences, get support, and learn coping mechanisms, right?
Exactly. They can be incredibly helpful for families who are feeling overwhelmed, isolated, or just need a place to process their emotions.
So while AUD can definitely put a strain on relationships, there are ways to navigate those challenges and even strengthen those bonds through the recovery process. It's like a forest fire that clears the way for new growth.
That's a great analogy. Recovery is a journey that affects the whole family, and with the right support, it can be an opportunity for growth, healing, and deeper connection.
This conversation has been so insightful. We've covered a lot of ground, from the science behind AUD and its impact on mental health to the paths to recovery and the importance of support systems. I'm feeling much more hopeful than when we started.
It's been a truly fascinating deep dive. Hopefully our listeners are gaining a better understanding of this complex issue and recognizing the hope that exists for those struggling with AUD.
Well said. Now, before we move on to the final part of our episode, I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder. We've discussed individual recovery extensively, but what about our role as a society? What can we do to cultivate a more supportive environment for those struggling with AUD and reduce the stigma surrounding addiction? It's not just about individual responsibility, right?
That's an incredibly important question, and it's one we'll be exploring in more detail in the next part of our deep dive. We'll discuss ways to promote awareness, challenge misconceptions, and advocate for policies that support recovery and well-being. It's about creating a society that fosters healing rather than judgment.
Okay, I'm excited to dive into that conversation. Stay tuned, listeners. We're about to explore how we can all be part of the solution. Welcome back, deep divers. We've explored the complex relationship between alcohol use disorder and mental health, and we delved into those inspiring pathways to recovery. But now it's time to kind of shift our focus to a broader perspective.
Oh.
Our role as a society in creating a more supportive environment for those affected by AUD.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
We often emphasize individual responsibility,
Right.
but societal factors play a huge role in shaping both the problem of AUD and the potential solutions.
Okay.
It's like trying to understand a play by only focusing on one actor.
Okay.
You miss the context, the setting, the other characters that make the story complete.
So it's about understanding that bigger picture,
Right.
the environment that influences individual choices and behaviors.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think about how our culture often glorifies alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
We see it in movies, TV shows, advertisements, even social media.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it sends a subtle message. Drinking is normal, even essential, for a good time.
Right.
It's like being in a room where everyone's speaking a different language.
Right.
And you feel pressured to learn it just to fit in.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
When something is constantly in your face,
Yeah.
it's easy to accept it as the norm
Right.
without questioning its impact.
Right.
And then there's the stigma surrounding addiction.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
We often frame it as a moral failing,
Uh-huh.
a weakness,
Right.
rather than a health issue.
It's a huge problem.
This judgment prevents people from seeking help
Right.
and fuels shame and isolation.
It does.
It's like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off.
Exactly.
It's unhelpful and dismissive of the real pain they're experiencing.
It is.
That's such a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
It really highlights the damage that stigma can inflict.
Creates barriers to treatment, employment, even social connection.
Wow.
Imagine trying to climb a mountain with a heavy backpack full of judgment and shame.
Yeah.
Makes the journey that much harder.
So how do we change this narrative?
Um,
How do we cultivate a more compassionate and supportive environment for those affected by AUD? It's not enough to just acknowledge the problem.
Right.
We need to actively work towards solutions, right?
Absolutely. It starts with education.
Okay.
The more we understand about the science behind AUD, the better equipped we are to challenge those harmful misconceptions and stereotypes.
Right.
Knowledge is like a light
Okay.
that dispels the darkness of ignorance and fear.
So it's about arming ourselves with facts and evidence to counter those outdated narratives.
Exactly.
What else can we do on a personal level to make a difference?
Well, we need to talk openly about AUD, just like we talk about any other health condition.
Right.
The more we normalize these conversations,
Okay.
the less shame people will feel about seeking help.
Okay.
It's about creating a culture of openness and support, where vulnerability is seen as strength, not weakness.
I love that.
Yeah.
Breaking the silence
Uh-huh.
and creating that safe space for people to share their struggles without fear of judgment is crucial.
Wow.
It's like extending a hand to someone who's drowning instead of just watching from the shore.
Right. And beyond individual actions, we can advocate for policies that promote recovery and well-being.
Okay.
Imagine a society where addiction is treated as a health issue, not a criminal one,
Okay.
and where resources are readily available to support those in need.
So it's about pushing for systemic change, for policies that prioritize prevention, treatment, and support for those affected by AUD.
Exactly.
Okay.
This could include increasing funding for treatment centers, making healthcare more accessible and affordable,
Right.
and addressing the social factors that contribute to addiction, like poverty and trauma.
It's about creating a safety net that catches people before they fall too far.
It is.
What about those who might be hesitant to embrace these changes?
Uh,
How do we convince those who might not see addiction as a pressing issue?
it's about helping them see the human impact of AUD.
Oh,
Share stories of individuals who have recovered and are now living full, meaningful lives. Connect the issue to things they care about,
okay.
like healthcare costs or community safety.
Right.
It's about building bridges of understanding and empathy.
So it's about finding common ground,
Right.
highlighting the interconnectedness of our well-being,
Yeah.
and showing how supporting those affected by AUD benefits everyone.
Exactly.
Okay.
And remember, every voice counts.
Right.
Don't underestimate the power of your own actions.
Right.
Whether it's volunteering at a local recovery center, donating to organizations that provide addiction services, or simply having open and honest conversations with your friends and family.
Right.
It's like planting seeds of change
Okay.
that can grow into a more compassionate and supportive society.
I'm feeling incredibly inspired by this conversation.
Good.
It's a reminder that even though the issue of AUD is complex and multifaceted,
Yeah,
we all have the power to contribute to positive change.
we do.
And it's a collective effort.
It is.
We need individuals, communities, and policymakers working together to create a world where recovery is not only possible, but celebrated.
Absolutely.
This has been an incredibly insightful and empowering deep dive into the world of alcohol use disorder and mental health.
It has.
We've explored the science, the challenges, the hope, and the potential for positive change.
We have. It's been a privilege to share this journey with you.
To our listeners, remember, knowledge is power, compassion is key, and recovery is always possible.
It is.
If you or someone you love is struggling with AUD, please reach out for help.
Yes, please do.
There are resources available, and you don't have to go through this alone.
You don't.
There's a whole community ready to support you on your journey to healing and well-being.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It was great being here.
Until next time, keep those minds curious, those hearts open, and those hands reaching out to make a difference.